Whether you're home or away, stay connected to your team with T-Mobile, the network that covers 99% of people in America. They've been investing billions to light up their best network ever. From your backyard to a sold-out stadium, get T-Mobile's best coverage yet. Plus, with T-Mobile, you get a price lock guarantee, so they won't raise the rate of your talk, text, and data, ever. There's never been a better time to switch. Visit your local T-Mobile store today. Coverage not available in some areas. Price lock exclusions like taxes, fees, select promos, and third-party services apply. See T-Mobile.com.
Hey, all cheaters. Welcome to the Always Cheating Podcast. My name is Josh. I'm here with Brandon. Brandon, how are you?
Josh, I'm very curious how today's episode is going to go, coming out of a weekend where Arsenal pulled off a miracle come-from-behind win to remain top of the table, and Liverpool throttle Manchester United 7-0, and we're probably going to talk for an hour and a half about wildcards. So,
Game week 29, yeah.
Yeah, game week 29. But man, what a weekend for so many reasons. I feel like we've been getting a lot of footballing treats. Whether it's a good match or a bad match, there are lots of intriguing matches, some insane results this weekend. And on top of that, the FPL community is kind of losing its collective mind. Some people have left the points behind. Some of us are getting the points. I thought my week was, dead, buried 6 feet underground until Mo Salah decided.
He just kept adding points. It was like, because it's funny because I had Gakpo and I was like, "Woo, brace from Gakpo! This is amazing." It was like top 10, like top 10K, here I come. Yeah. And then I was like, "Wait, Salah goal, another one." And then that assist at the end, I was like, "Please say that Jota touched that before Firmino scored."
Oh God, yeah, and Firmino, they showed an offside shot of Firmino with his foot. I was like, you could tell VAR was just like love it. They were. Yeah, I don't know what was going on there. Yeah, but
Salah took his shirt off. And I feel like once the shirt comes off, I guess that was before actually. That was on goal number 6, I believe. But
you can't put that toothpaste back in the tube. But Mo Salah was the epitome of the Vince McMahon meme, where it's just like escalating Vince McMahon until like lasers are shooting out of his eyes.
That's right. That's exactly the whole team. I mean, there was it's crazy that we're leading with this because I thought that Arsenal game was so incredible that would have to be the lead here. But let's talk about Liverpool Man United first. And Forlex on Twitter, who does a lot of team preview stuff that I really like, he said, "How do you guys think we should make sense of a result like that? It feels like you can craft a narrative any way you want. Is it better to almost ignore it and continue with whatever plan you had in place already, or take it as an important info and react?" I mean, so how do we? I guess my feeling initially was that I was more Liverpool focused than Man United. I feel like every now and then, even a very good team just gets absolutely smoked, and that doesn't really necessarily mean anything, right? The next week they could turn around and just be back to normal.
Right. Before we started recording, I actually just watched a Tifo IRL YouTube clip. Highly recommend from The Athletic. And John McKenzie on there gave like a 10-minute breakdown of what happened in this match. Why was it 7-0? And the interesting comparison he drew was Ten Hag and Manchester United playing man for man across the pitch, much in the same way that Bielsa would set up his Leeds team. And Leeds, it was like feast or famine. If it didn't go according to plan, it would be a bloodbath, and Leeds would leak 4 or 5 goals. And the man-for-man system that Ten Hag rolled out against Liverpool, it's wholly reliant on the midfielders and the forward players pressing to win their one-on-one battles. Casemiro did not have a good game. Weghorst playing in the hybrid 8-10 role did not work. He wasn't winning any balls. And from there, Liverpool's just constantly transitioning into attack with numbers. And it just seemed, in my takeaway from that breakdown is it's probably just a factor of the matchup between Manchester United and Liverpool at this moment. The bigger question, I think, is what emotionally is Liverpool going to take from this? Because they've had the players, and I think particularly with Nunez and Gakpo, how quickly can they bed in and feel like they have become part of a team and develop this chemistry? And a result like this, I think, accelerates where Klopp wants his players to be emotionally and with confidence, which feels like they haven't had. And it's the quality of finishing in every one of those goals was pretty remarkable. So I think it's good news for Liverpool, not horrible news for Manchester United. It's just like a moment for Ten Hag to see, like, okay, here were some failures in the way we set up. And how did you view it? What was going through your mind?
Well, I mean, I guess like fantasy wise, it was an unusual match. I think there were a couple moments early on where Liverpool came out, super hot the first 20 minutes or so, and then Man United sort of started to assert themselves a little bit. Trent almost gets caught out on that Bruno diving header, right? That misses by a foot.
Yeah, right.
And so maybe if Liverpool or if Man United score, Liverpool concede early on, maybe that's a different kind of match. I mean, these matches, you see 7-0 and you think it could only ever be that way, right? But the whole match changes sometimes when a goal is scored early, and it was like they kind of weathered the little comeback. It felt like maybe it was just a little bit of a come down for Man United after the League Cup final last week too. I always think after you have a big celebration like that, it's hard to maybe reset a little bit. Maybe they had a full week. They almost would have been better off, I feel like, if they'd played a match at midweek and just kind of, like Liverpool had. Liverpool was just they just felt much fresher in that match. And they're coming so fast and furious right now that maybe in a case like that, having just played a little more recently was actually a little bit of an edge. So I think my feeling right now is I don't have Mo Salah. They play Bournemouth next week. And I have been on the fence. You and I will talk more about this in a second. You and I, both of us didn't wildcard, have come out, I think, for the better for not having wildcarded. I think in both of our cases, you with Salah, me with Gakpo, Gakpo and Trent, both of whom probably would have been dropped had I wildcarded. And and now the question is, do I have enough Liverpool players for this Bournemouth match? And do I wildcard now? I didn't do it in 26. The game of 26 wildcard became. It came like it kind of exploded in popularity, like in just a couple of short days. Yeah. And my rule of thumb when it comes to wildcards is, I don't like to do it without a lot of time to plan. Because I don't like to rush a wild card. I have done it in the past. I've done some rage wild cards or some more likely like some injury induced wild cards, right? 3 players get injured and you're like, okay, well, I didn't really want a wild card, but now I'm going to have to pull the trigger early. And I also don't like to wild card, and I don't know exactly who I wanted to get. And that was really the problem for me this week, is I just didn't feel fully confident in what Brighton players to pick up. I'm not sure I know any better now, honestly, after Saturday's match. And I felt like there were just a few too many questions for me. And I felt like I could just wait a week or two or later, right? Wait until the 30s possibly, and do that. And I actually think we may have picked up enough information this week that I feel a little more comfortable doing it. I mean, some of it honestly comes down to just Jason Steele replacing Sanchez, and knowing now that you could build a team that, because Brighton have so many doubles coming up, and then you could sort of build a team with a 3.9 million keeper that you could start for doubles, and that will kind of like allow you to just have a lot more players, right? It's just like the 0.6 million or whatever he is over Sanchez is or under Sanchez seems small, but that kind of stuff is massive, right? Like in terms of what it allows you to do. So I'm definitely considering. We could talk more about that in a minute, but. I mean, there was, I guess, there was a question from our old buddy, Mark Southerns. He said, I noticed you both decided to keep the wild card back when there was a very persuasive argument to play it. Were either of you wrestling with the dilemma, and what convinced you to hold tight? So where were you with the wild card?
It's interesting that Mark says there was a very persuasive argument, which I listened to a number of these quote unquote persuasive arguments, and I admit I'm not the smartest guy in the room, and maybe I just didn't get it.
Yeah.
I was just like, I don't know what's going on. I'm not sure I understand I understood the logic, but I didn't. It in no way felt bulletproof to me. I understand when the FPL conversation can bubble up around something that is, hey, I think it's a good idea to captain this person or transfer this person in or out this game week.
Yep.
Short term is good for that. When a very persuasive argument is relying upon certain dominoes to fall in a certain order over the course of a month, that is over many seasons of experience. How do so many managers not understand it's never going to go like that? So I mean, and it's still, listen, we're recording this ahead of the Brentford Fulham match.
Yep.
Tony and the Brentford defense could come through and sort of reassert the dominance of the game week 26 wildcarders, and then fair play to them. But if that's not the case, I just really the upside just felt like very sort of like a mirage in the desert and in the distance, and I wasn't seeing it for whatever
I felt like
reason.
once. And it's like I'm sort of wary. I think you're being a little cautious about this as well. I'm wary of, it's easy to be very hindsighty, right? And now that James Ward-Prowse misses a penalty and Madison gets 1 point,
and Sanchez, as you were saying about the Brighton goalkeeping situation, of course, this is the 1 week where suddenly Bob Sanchez is dropped, much like me bringing in Akanji. For the recent Man City double, and Akanji's started every game since, but just happened to be that double where he only played like 20 minutes.
Solly March blanks. A lot of people drop Salah to fund Kane, right? Because Kane makes more sense over the next 3 weeks, certainly. So it's like all of these various things that you're like, okay, this all makes sense. Like I mean, understand.
Two other things that I would highlight quickly is the matchups for Brighton and Brentford. I got this wrong, where I thought West Ham was going to actually play football.
Yeah,
against
I'm
Brighton.
With you. I thought West Ham would play better as well. I was shocked it was that one-sided. I mean, a 4-0.
Yeah.
West Ham have played reasonable, or I don't know, reasonable. They have played reasonably well of late, and I was a little surprised for them to get.
Everyone wants to know, Josh, is David Moyes still in the job as of this recording?
I think he's unfireable now. He's in like late period Wenger stage where he just
and of course Fulham is a great team. I mean, they very well could struggle in the midfield without Polina, who's out on yellow card suspension. But I feel like that result is a little tricky to predict. So those two matchups were the key teams going into that wild card, and then going into looking ahead to 27 were Brentford and Brighton. And I think we were on the same page there, Josh.
I think so too. And I was not. I had no interest in Leicester players, no interest in Southampton players. I mean, Ward-Prowse is a fun player to consider, certainly, and he was somebody who I had a moment there where I was like, maybe Gakpo to Ward-Prowse, but it doesn't really make sense when you think about it. I was talking to somebody about this a couple of days ago, and it's like when I think of Ward-Prowse, I always think about these like, postage stamp top bins,
you love your top bins.
I love top bins. And you're always like, well, that's why I want him, because he's this free kick genius. And then, look at the numbers. I mean, it's like, he gets like 6 a year. It's not, it's not like he's, an 18 goal scorer, but he gets
You're basically getting a good Luka Milivojevic into your fantasy team.
You kind of are, right? Because and it's not a totally, they don't play the same position, but it's not an unfair comparison because there's really there aren't a lot of players who can really score for Southampton, right? And so it's not like he can kind of he's not setting people up. I mean, it's Brighton is actually a little bit different, where they do have a lot of really talented. It's kind of interesting the way they've developed and sort of I don't know, just like the fact that they were able to lose Trossard, and it's kind of fine, right? They picked up Matoma, March, and McAllister, right? McAllister had a good match as well.
Evan Ferguson is being hailed
too.
as their new number 9. Looks great.
Yep, super cheap. So I know you love a cheap third forward now, Brandon. So maybe that's on the table for you. So I'm with you though. I wasn't convinced. It wasn't like I was so in love with all of the players that I had for this game week. But I think I just didn't want to leave because I wasn't convinced either. I'm not sure that I am now. What I have grown increasingly convinced by is that there's some value in just playing the wild card early to take advantage. It's like the later you play the wild card, the less impact it has. Obviously, right? I mean, if you wait too late, you're basically playing a wild card for like a specific game week, right? And if you can play it smartly early on, then you can play it for multiple doubles and hopefully cover yourself with the blanks. And so I think 27 holds a little more appeal for me now. I've heard some people make persuasive arguments for 28. I'm sorry, I don't even want to. I feel like we're going to do the whole podcast right at the start here. So let me just ask you before we'll move on and we'll come back to it in the main part of the pod. What do you currently think you're going to do with your wild card? Are you going to play it soon, later, in the 30s?
I have not decided the week. My plan currently is to not play it until a later date. As I look ahead to 27, I only have one doubler. I've already made one of my 2 free transfers going into 27, and that was Andreas Pereira to Matoma. So I've got him.
Okay. So you got one. Yep.
I've got one doubler. Right now, my thinking is maybe I burn 4 going into 27, and I free hit in 28. Because if you look at the projections, and we'll do a hat tip to Ben Krellen on Twitter, 28 will be the biggest blank game week. So if the intention is to play a free hit and a blank that would be most advantageous to you, then 28 seems optimal. Yep. Then I look at 29. I currently have 7 players who do not double in 29. 4 of those would be an Arsenal triple up and Erling Haaland. Throw Harry Kane in the mix. Those are 5 great. Arsenal play at home at the Emirates against Leeds, who are not great. And then you've got Haaland and Kane up front. So it's really just Sam Greenwood, my cheap striker who doesn't play, and Bueno, who is injured at the moment. I have to figure out how to replace those guys with doublers. And if I can do that, and if I can do that, then I think I feel comfortable playing the bench boost in game week 29, having not wild carded, because I 100% agree 29 with the most doubles is going to be the best game week for the rest of the season to play that bench boost. So where I am at right now is the key to this plan is actually dropping Mo Salah, the guy who lifted me up like he was Patrick Swayze at the end of Dirty Dancing, and I was Baby, whoever she is, and
Jennifer Grey.
Yeah, exactly.
Is that her name? Yeah.
And Mo has Bournemouth in game week 27, followed by a blank and then a kind of a crummy double. So if I want to keep Mo for Bournemouth, that means it really restricts what I can do at the game week 27 double, and then I free hit into 20. I kind of feel like I have to get rid of Mo, which feels bad.
This game week or next? Like
this going 29? Into 27. Yes.
Before he plays Bournemouth.
Yeah.
There's no move. There's no player. I'm not sure there's any 2 players you could bring in who will net you more than he might get in that Bournemouth match. I'm considering captaining him for that. I'm considering literally wild carding so that I can have Mo, so that I can captain him for 27.
So I want to talk more about this idea of how you then navigate 28 and 29. Would you free hit in 28 if you wild carded in 27?
There is a way to make it work, I think, and it just but you basically have to you have to give up a couple of players. I think it's because if you want to hold on to Rashford, which seems advisable, if you want to hold on to Mo, right, in which case I would bring him in that case, and then I suppose Haaland. And then that is the big question, which is, is there a way that you could justify dropping Haaland, even if temporarily, in order to set yourself up for the stretch run there? Because if you just kind of have Kane instead of Haaland for 28, then Kane can kind of turn into Haaland a couple of weeks after that. Their prices are close enough. So that is something that might happen. I would not recommend that anyone who has Mo Salah, himself included, drop him before this Bournemouth. They're going to have a week off. I mean, they're flying high. He took his shirt off. That's always a good sign. We haven't seen happy shirt off Mo in quite a while, and that's a good Mo. That is the Mo we all know and fear and sometimes like if we've captained him that week. So. But let's table a little bit of that, Brandon. Before we get into some specifics for the next part of the pod, I did want to quickly note just to kind of set the table a little bit that we have 4 teams that play twice in Game Week 27: Brentford, Brighton, Crystal Palace, poor Crystal Palace, the forgotten team. Will Zaha almost got in the conversation after he scored that offside goal, and then Southampton too, who are. I suppose on a little mini run here now. They're playing. I don't know. They beat Leicester. Does that count as a run? I don't know. It was a nice win for them. We'll give them some credit. Let's see. Southampton form table. Can I call it a run? Let me check here.
I was listening to the
2 wins and 3.
2 wins and 3.
Yeah.
I was listening to the BBC 606 call-in show, and a Manchester United fan was in, and he's like, we've got Southampton next. We can bounce back. And I think it was Robbie Savage who was like, yeah, good luck. Beating Southampton, sort of like, ha, ha, ha. And the Manchester United fan was so like in his own head. He was like, yeah, I think we can do it. I think we can beat Southampton. Not really understanding the narrative that Southampton are just objectively terrible this season. And yes, this magical run that they seem to be on that you mentioned, Josh, doesn't seem.
Well, listen, they picked up 6 points in their last 3. I'm not sure you're going to need more than like 29 points to stay up this year. So they may have picked up 20% of the points they need in the last 2 matches. So I don't know what from down. Liverpool just beat Man United 7. They beat him by a touchdown, Brandon. So I don't know what's going on. I did want to briefly go back though to the fact that you've dropped Pereira for Matoma already, and yet you have Pereira in that Fulham match, and that is the rare. It happens once every year or two in fantasy, which is you get the farewell game. You get the Monday match for a player that you've already dropped, and it's like you just sort of get to watch him and remember what it was like.
It was exactly like Bobby Firmino announcing this week that he was leaving Liverpool at the summer, and so I have just announced on this podcast Pereira's leaving my fantasy team, and I hope he gives me a goal as a parting gift. That would. Having no Brentford defense, if that goal comes from Pereira, it would just be like spectacular. I will open. I promise, if Pereira scores, I will open up the nearest window and yell, "Hey, New York City!"
I want you to record that if you actually do it. So that's where we are. It's a very swingy week for sure. And I put out a call for questions on a couple on our Discord and then on Twitter as well. And he had the usual mix of hardcore strategy and people asking why in the world we torture ourselves with fantasy. And you and I have both been there on both sides of that.
Many times.
Well, yeah, I was gonna say both sides, the good and the bad. Oh man, that Arsenal match, which is very briefly. Okay, well then we'll get into the other part of the pod. But were you watching that in real time? The end of that Arsenal match, that was incredible.
I was, and there was a twitch in me. I was like,
It moves.
Well, I don't know. It was a corner kick. Anything could happen, and. I remember the first thing I saw after my brain recognized that a goal had been scored. I saw at the top of the screen Martin Odegaard fall on his back with his arms straight up in the air in this just like relief and exultation. And then I see Saliba, my defender in my fantasy squad, tearing toward the corner flag alone. And I'm kind of like, well, what? Did I miss something? Was that Saliba?
Yeah.
Did he touch the ball? I have no idea. But yes, again, taking fantasy out of it, it was. There's a very cynical, sort of rude way to put it. Be like, headline is Arsenal beats worst team in the division at home. Crowd goes wild, but. If you strip out that aspect of it, I mean, when Aguero did this for Man City to win the title, who was it against? It was against Queen's Park Rangers, who were not any big shakes. Yeah. And It doesn't matter who the opponent is in these situations. What matters was that was a truly, truly, truly special moment.
Yeah, and Bournemouth have a lot to play for too, right? It's so the stakes are pretty high for them, and I thought it was just really an inspiring match. It was I've said this before, and the reason I'm bringing this up at all right now is because there are a bunch of people who are like I'm just so annoyed with fantasy and how it's worked out right now, and I think that it's what I have said before in this podcast this season, which is that even when the fantasy is bad, the matches have been good. And so fantasy has really been a way to just keep you really engaged with what I think has been a really fun season. I almost feel like we're far enough along in this now that even if Man City win the title, I think we can call this like a successful and exciting championship race, right? Because Arsenal aren't going to give it up in the next 2 weeks, right? It's going to so even if it happens in the 30s, I think we've had so much fun with this title race already. Especially with these late Arsenal comebacks against Villa and Bournemouth now. So anyway, that was super exciting. Oh, and then I got a Ben White goal, which was what a luck box moment that was. A 7-pointer from
Speaking
from Mr.
of feelings,
White.
when I saw Ben White coming off the bench, I was like, "Oh, Josh is getting a goal here." Ben White has
You
never
thought so?
scored for 100%, 100%. That is that's your life.
It does feel like
and I love you for it.
Like my fan. That is my fantasy. My fantasy luck. There's no doubt about it. All right. Well, let's take a quick break. I did want to quickly say thank you to Leah, Tom King, and Maddie Safer. There's new Patreon supporters as of this week. We've had a really nice run of new Patreon supporters. We hope it continues throughout the rest of the season. And I think the addition of the Discord has really been helpful as well. I think it's kind of reshaped our engagement with. I just feel like we're having great conversations on there right now. And do an extra podcast each week. Thank you to friend of the podcast, Dave, for filling in for me on last week's pod. And so
that was fun.
So if you want to support, he's the best. A producer, of course, as well. And if you want to support the podcast, you can go to patreon.com/alwayscheating. Thank you so much to the 500 plus people who do. We really, really appreciate it. And all right, Brian, let's take a break. We'll get back and we'll talk about game week 27.
Hey, listeners, did you hear that a Lionel Messi trading card recently sold for more than $500,000 on Golden Auctions? Golden is the leading and most trusted destination for some of the most significant pieces of sports and pop culture collectibles, and, better yet, it's not just for high-ticket items. Golden's new always-on marketplace and weekly auctions start at just $5. That means collectors of all kinds can enjoy the same quality, convenience, and seamless user experience that Golden is known for. Whether you're looking to buy, sell, grade, or vault, Golden has something for everyone. Your one-stop destination for the love of collecting. Hey, let me put it to you this way. Over the last 3 recent market crashes, sports cards have held stable value. While the S&P 500 fell by an average of nearly 17%, and bonds took a small hit, sports cards actually saw overall positive returns. Interested in selling your collectibles? Now is the time to do so. Golden is offering no marketplace fees for items under $10,000. List your items on Golden's marketplace now to enjoy this limited time offer. Head over to golden.co to get started. That's golden.co, GOLDIN.co.
All right, Brian, we're back. Game week 27 kicks off on Saturday. We've got a nice long week to decide what the heck we're going to do with the doubles, with wildcard. It's really is crucial, too, to decide this week what you're going to do for game weeks 27, 28, and 29. You almost have to think of them in a set because, in a case like mine, if I don't wildcard or free hit in game week 28, I really have to be very wary of the Brighton players that I bring in particular, because they don't play in 28. They blank. Brentford players do play in 28, so you're on a slightly stronger ground there, firmer ground. So the opening question that I have for you, Brandon, is which double game weekers across these 4 teams do you absolutely want? Which ones? Who do you want?
Yeah, well, I've already brought in Matoma, and you're right to point out that Brighton are troubling because they have so much good and a little sprinkling of bad. So they double in 27 and 29, but they do not play in 28. So it's interesting you say, let's take these 3 upcoming game weeks as a set. And if you do, in 3 game weeks, Brighton play 4 matches. That feels pretty good to me. But yeah, compare to Brentford, who also double in 27 and 29. They'll play in 28. So they have, in 3 game weeks, 5 matches. So that's standard. Tony just really does feel essential to me. And at least the fixtures in 27 and 28, Everton, Southampton, both away, but really chaotic defenses there. And then home against an equally chaotic defense. Whenever you see Wout-Face coming for you, Josh, just feel confident that you could dribble around him if you had to. It was such a
weird. Well, just that moment where the board press pen save, you're like, oh, maybe Leicester's like, I don't know, it's going to change the game a little bit. And then Southampton just went and scored 2 minutes later. It was
no problem.
Fine.
Not a big deal.
No problem.
There was something really exciting watching Brighton just demolish West Ham, and to see all of the players who we've been talking about in light of these game weeks do really well. Solly March looked fine, even though he had no fantasy returns. But I actually like Brighton's fixtures quite a bit better than Brentford. Yeah. So the double in 27 is Leeds and Palace, and then it's Brentford and Bournemouth in 29. And I just feel like the attacking form that Brighton is in, the confidence, that feels so good to me. So kind of attacking, we can sort of dig into the details of Brighton attacking assets if you want, but I feel like it's Matoma or fill in your favorite player here, and then Tony, and then probably a Brentford defender. And I pulled some stats. This has been like a theme of mine recently. I just did like a simple, basic comparison of Ben Mee
stats. Just what came up here. Yeah.
Yeah. What did come up? Well, I'm just going to give you the takeaway here, Josh. Okay. Ben Mee, Ethan Pinnock, and Rico Henry. And Ben Mee is just very solid in terms of shots in the box, goals attempts. He's a center back, but he's comparing favorably. Rico Henry is your classic attacking fullback, and he's creating the big chances where Pinnock and Mee are not, because they're center backs. They're just trying to get on the end of them. But just consistent upside seems to be with the center backs, and Ben Mee edges Pinnock, I feel. So I guess I'm saying Matoma, Mee, and Tony. This is not rocket science, right? Where have I gone wrong?
Well, I guess it's just that just that you're a little light with Brighton. I guess that would be the only question, is whether there's something to be said for being a little more aggressive, maybe taking a -4 and just kind of going for it a little bit, just because it's Leeds who are really struggling at the moment, and the Crystal Palace who are struggling as well. And so it's 2 struggling teams, and it's a pretty informed Brighton side, and they're so cheap that you can if you can fit them into your squad without sacrificing really good players. There's an argument for it. I mean, I think even I've got Odegaard right now. I'm not enamored with him. Like, to me, dropping Odegaard for one of these, again, this is where it's so tricky. We have to decide what you want to do for 28 and 29, because Arsenal don't play twice in 29. They play away to Fulham in 27, which I don't think is an easy fixture.
No.
Right? And so I think that you could make an argument, but the only problem is they do play in 28. So
against Palace. And then they play Leeds in 29. Yeah, these are good fixtures, both at home.
Well, certainly I'm not going to drop Saka. I think he, and then it's sort of funny though, as you start to be like, all right, who can I drop here? Who can I?
Yeah, that's the problem,
get rid
isn't
of
it?
to make these moves? Yeah.
We can name like 10 guys who you definitely want, but it's you see that in everyone who wildcarded into this week, and they dropped Liverpool assets. And I mean, it's different in that no one would have predicted this scoreline and the fantasy results against Manchester United, but you know what I mean?
Yeah, I do. And so I think the thing I'm curious about is, what is the argument for wildcarding in 28 over just going ahead and pulling the trigger on 27? What is the what is the real difference there. I guess in my case, if I waited until 28, I could maybe get rid of some, like, my 2 Liverpool players, but then why would I don't know. I mean, I don't necessarily feel like I need Trent, right, for away to Man City, away to Chelsea in game week 29. I kind of just want Mo. That's like the only player I really even with Gakpo's brace. It sort of feels like it's kind of the argument that everyone had going into 25, and I just sort of I ignored it in that case, and that actually worked out reasonably well for me. My argument was basically that if I don't go for Mo, I can afford Trent, and so I kind of gambled on Gakpo. And it didn't hurt me too much. Actually, arguably helped
probably
me.
Probably a net win, yeah.
Probably a net win, yeah. And then I've had three clean sheets in a row from Trent. No attacking returns, kind of
weird,
somewhat surprisingly. But I think only 1 bonus point too. But yeah, again, so I've had I think it's like 19 points from Trent in the last 3 weeks, and then Gakpo gets the brace in game week 28. So. Where am I going with this, Brandon? I don't know. Just, I find it really tricky to
I think
figure
you were
out,
going down an interesting path of talking about the wild card in game week 28. And I do think that solves a problem I was talking through at the start of the podcast of how I'm solving my, how I want to resolve my team issues without playing the wild card is I would have to get rid of Mo going or Kane or Haaland for that matter.
Yeah.
At least 28, you get the Bournemouth fixture with Liverpool. It's a weird game week to wild card. Game week
27, you mean? Yeah. And 27, you get the Bournemouth. Yeah. 28, Liverpool don't play. Yeah.
Of course, that's what I'm saying. If you wild card in 28, then you get to hold your Liverpool assets. So I'm speaking from somebody who currently has Mo.
Yeah.
I would get to keep him through 27 and then dump him because I think I agree with what you're saying about the necessity of Liverpool becomes severely diminished once you get that 28 blank followed by a really unenticing double with City, Chelsea, both away fixtures, and then they do get Arsenal in game week 30. So I think Liverpool's life really only lasts through the end of 27 for me.
Well, I don't mind having Mo for the double, or what you do is you have Mo just for the Bournemouth match, and then you could drop him for somebody in game week 28. Maybe it's even like a -4 or something like that, and then you turn that Mo money. Mo money.
No, don't do it. Don't do
not
it.
Not intentional. But you could turn Salah into Bruno in 29, right? So you sort of get Salah. So in my case, the 27 wildcard has more appeal for 2 specific reasons that I think are somewhat unique to my squad and how things have turned out. One is that I kind of aggressively dropped Trippier in game week 25. So I do not. This is a very detailed podcast for us, by the way, Brian. This is by our standards. There's a lot of technical long-term thinking. We normally our podcast traffics in vibes, but this is we're thinking some big things through here. So normally. So I don't have Trippier because I dropped him game week 25, and I don't have Salah for game week 27, and so. I could see how a game week 28 wild card could be more appealing if you weren't in that position. But in my position, I really almost feel like I not having Trippier for this, for this Wolves match. Mm-hmm. There's just no Wolves are not scoring that goal. That match could be 370 minutes long, and Wolves are not going to score in that match. I do not see it happening. So. I don't know if you saw any of I watched it, on a second screen because I had Kane, and that was just a really low quality match. I'm happy for Traore because I just always liked him, and I was glad to see him score the goal. Classic kind of goofy Traore goal, but hey, good for
anything
him.
Works with that guy, I'm here for it for sure. But Bueno. Being injured really does screw up my planning in some major ways. The cheapest, least consequential guy in your team, and suddenly there's it's like a butterfly flapping its wings.
Yes, Bueno being injured and dropping Trippier over Shaw were the two things that really killed my just fade everything strategy. And so I think that if I can wildcard now and get a team that I like for 27, that I think that where I'm reasonably covered for 28 as well, right? Where maybe I only have, maybe I have to make one transfer or even take a -4 to get 11 for 28. And then it sets me up really nicely for 29 and to really tackle that with a bench boost. And then I still have a free hit in hand for the rest of the season. That feels like just an aggressive style of play that I think is kind of in line with the way that I like to approach FPL in general, right? Which is that I just sort of, it's like that feels like a way for me to target 27, a way for me to target 29, and then still leave one more chip in the holster, for either 32 or
I'm going to need
34.
I'm going to need you to talk a little bit more about 28 and how you play a 27 wild card and not. You said you could play a free transfer going into 28, but would you plan to have a full 11 for that game week? I can't imagine you would, because you couldn't bring in Liverpool. You couldn't have Haaland plus Liverpool, keep Rashford, and then double on Brighton assets.
I probably have to drop Haaland. That would be the only way it really probably works, which is, that's fun. That's a fun spot to be. It is what it is,
man.
I already dropped Trippier and it was fine. I don't know. It's like it's like chess. It's like I dropped Trippier in 25 and I gained rank. It's sort of like you have to sacrifice your pieces sometimes in order to keep moving forward. And that's just part of the game. And I think that Haaland will probably not be over 100% effective ownership player until you get to probably game week 30, in which point it becomes incredibly essential because they play Southampton in 30 and then Leicester in 31. So this is the only problem with dropping Haaland, is that you basically need to be totally, absolutely ready to bring him back in. But listen, every player in fantasy, even the most absolutely expensive players in fantasy, which Haaland weirdly isn't still. He's up there, but he's not, I think he's the third or fourth most expensive. Every player can be brought back with a -4. It's always possible, right? And so it's never as dire as it seems. You lose a little bit of team value, but I was looking at mine. My team value is terrible. I'm at 101.9, but I'm at 11,000 in the world, right? It's like I'm sacrificing team value for points, and that. This is when you do it. You rack up the team value in game weeks 1 through 15 or whatever, and then you cash in that capital later on in order to get a team that's better for the stretch run. So I don't know.
The freakonomics in FPL. I like this.
Yeah, exactly. This is Josh's philosophy corner. All right. Well, let's get on to a couple other questions. Question number 2, Brandon, is that Man United hosts Southampton, Liverpool play Bournemouth. Are we definitely captaining a double game weeker for this week? Geez, an angry Marcus Rashford at home to Southampton. You have to imagine the Man United are going to come out like a house on fire in that match, right?
Haaland is my captain on my bus team right now. I ended up captaining Haaland in game week 26 as well. Yeah. And it seemed like an interesting opportunity.
4, right?
It won out over the Saka captainers just barely. It's a Pyrrhic victory. Shout out to Danny Bean, our friend, who actually captained Salah this week, like the complete crazy person that he is. It's just kind of amazing.
He topped everyone in our mini league by 40 points. It was incredible. Good for him.
But yeah, I'm with you on 27. You could make a case for everybody. I guess we've already discussed how the Fulham away for Arsenal is just tricky enough that it takes them out of the captaincy pool. Harry Kane playing at home to Nottingham Forest. Now Spurs are in pretty bad form at the moment, but that's generally away. Away form is where they're really hurting. I would expect that their home support could lift them up a bit. Yeah, I think it's kind of between Mo, Kane, and Haaland, and I haven't even mentioned a player like Matoma or even Ivan Toney. So you brought in Toney in 26.
I don't even know yet. He hasn't played. It's I hope he's got all he has to do is score more than 12 points for the Darwin that I dropped, and I'll feel great about it. I know I complained about that. I always be complaining, but I was just like, I just need like 3 goals from him tomorrow to feel good about that move. And someone's like, oh, you got Gakpo. Why are you complaining? I'm like, this is just, we one thinks this way. Yeah, I want it all. It's like, want everything to go well. What are you talking about? Am I trying to like impress with my good manners?
Yeah, seriously. This is how the game is. You always want more, and that's why just look at the most. So, you think Roy Keane was like, no, this is what I have now is good enough. No, that guy's a real jerk, and he's successful because of it. You're the Roy Keane of FPL.
Yeah, Lou Reed. That's what I want. That's what I want to be. We all want to be Lou Reed, though. It's like, I wouldn't put myself.
Everybody
in the
who saw Josh's FPL team started an FPL team of their own. Isn't that the way the saying goes?
Only 1,000 people listened to the first episode of this podcast, but
they all started their own fantasy podcast.
Started their own fantasy podcast. I think they're all wonderful picks. I think that I think that the Liverpool Bournemouth match is the one that really the only problem with it is it's the opening match for game week 27. So if you captain Salah, which is a very reasonable thing to do for game week 27, and he blanks, you have to go through Saturday, Sunday, wait 2 days, and Monday, and just wait those 5 days to see if he can do it. I think that going with a Matoma or McAllister, Solly March, I don't know. I just can't get there with him. I mean, it's just all of these many years where he wasn't a great fantasy asset. Maybe if I were a pure stats player, I'm sure I could get there. But for me, it's like I still really struggle to see him and think, oh, this guy's like fantasy gold. It's just hard for me to do that.
I'm sure somebody's going to mention it, but Liverpool do have is it an important Champions League match? They're down 4 goals against Real Madrid. They play away the Wednesday following the Saturday Premier League kickoff against Bournemouth. Now, that's plenty of time. Saturday to Wednesday is about as good as it gets for European turnaround time. And I think Mo is he just never gets dropped. And then you start to get into these funky discussions of Firmino and Jota. Do they get starts? It just does make Mo that much more appealing because he is really rotation proof as much as one could be.
Yeah. I would love to see Tony come out tomorrow and just play unbelievably well, right? And be like sort of, because he's really angry. I guess all the FA Cup stuff leaked, right? So I could imagine. Remember, like
the
when,
FA charges. I don't think the FA Cup.
FA charges. Yeah,
he was pissed about how the draw went for the quarterfinals.
Exactly. Yeah, exactly. Yeah, but he was. It's a little bit like when. Well, he got mad. I mean, he scored a brace. I think it was after the World Cup, right? When he didn't make the team, and I think that it's like I remember Jamie Vardy won that great run after the whole Colleen Rooney, Rebecca Vardy incident, and an angry forward is a beautiful thing in fantasy, and so so if he comes out and plays super well in the. In that opening match, I could certainly make a case. My only wish is that Brentford played one of their 2 matches in the double game week at home, because Brentford at home are remarkably good, and those are both away matches. So you earlier mentioned trio, and you talked about the defenders, and that I guess is the one thing is I haven't really looked at this too closely. I mean, some of this is just how I kind of remember it feels to me like Brentford are a much stronger team at home and on the road. Yes. So or away, as they say. In the UK, we say the road. Here in the US, Brandon, as you know, we hit the open road like Willie Nelson and Jack Kerouac. Yeah. So but I think that that is the only thing. But I mean, Brentford play Everton and Southampton. Those are not good teams, Brandon. You and me, like and many others, I know, but
many people are saying
maybe the craziest thing about this whole weekend was the fact that I got lucky to get 0 points from Tarkowski. Because that could have been a -1 from Luke Shaw.
Well, it could, yes, and also it could have been worse from Tarkowski. He was just like running around that pitch like a madman. I do not understand what was going through his mind. Which, I mean, I think the answer is nothing, just an empty void. And,
he be so mean sometimes.
Listen, when I've got an axe to grind, we're grinding. Luke Shaw just seemed like, I don't know, he was playing behind Marcus Rashford and Bruno Fernandes, who were having appalling games, and he was cleaning up so much crap. And he was getting drawn into some. Yeah. Anyway, just like a bad week for defenders. Very bad. Game week 26.
Except for Ben White, my beloved.
Enough with the Ben White. Let's move on.
Converted right back. All right. So, okay. So we talked about wild cards already. There was a question from FPL Conte about the best wild card and free hit weeks for game week 26. I think it really is. Maybe in some ways we talked about it, but I think. This is not the fun answer, but I do think it's slightly team dependent, and I think it does depend a little bit. Like in your case, where you still have Trippier and you have Salah, I think it makes a lot of sense for you to wait one more week. I think you should be a little more aggressive going to 27 and consider burning 4.
I'm definitely burning 4. Yes, and
okay.
I was going to step on what you're saying there. I think the question is if I go -8, and that will largely come down to who I end up dropping, whether it's.
Yeah,
you're definitely talking me off of the Mo ledge here. And Holland weirdly becomes the one in my sights, but if I haven't fully worked through it. But you're right. It is if you have certain key assets, you can work around it. And as I said, I'm thinking free hit in 28, and there is a power, I believe, to a bench boost, even if you are going to be playing.
I think
five or 6 single game weekers.
I think if you find yourself in a -8 territory, you have to really consider whether it makes sense just to pull the wild card trigger now, because you could probably set yourself up with a team that you don't hate for game week 28 that wouldn't require you to free hit, and then you probably would be a little better set up for 29 as well. So
that's the
just
broad.
It's
the big picture fantasy strategy talk. The one that I sometimes struggle with is becoming passive. You're like, I've got a squad full of good players who I like. They've done good things with me. Just going to sit with them, and then suddenly you find yourself without a particular player, or you find yourself like the danger I'm in is I just keep putting off the wild card without any plan of when. When else am I going to play it? And then suddenly it's like game week 34, and I'm kind of like, well, I guess I'll play it now. And there's not as big of an upside there. So I understand that point of view.
That's how I felt a little bit. That's how I felt a little bit going to this week too, where I was like, I think I even said this somewhere, but I was like, I just kind of liked my team this week. I thought it looked fine. It just didn't feel. I liked my trio of Arsenal players. I did think Ben White would start, just because.
Why does it? Tommy Yasu was. Sorry, I'm being so
never
negative.
Never plays well, right?
He was bad. He was really bad.
I know he was kind of good last year, but it feels like now it's like you can see why they think he's a little more. His tendencies are to be a little more aggressive, right? You can see like he's a little more natural in the box than White is. Although it's almost like White got the message or something like that, because it was like a Ben White transformed after that. So anyway, all right. So let's move on to a couple of listener questions, Brandon. Z says, how many doublers are enough for game week 27? So we talked a little bit about how many we absolutely want, but enough. Of course, it's a hard question to answer, but what would you be comfortable with going into 27? How many players?
4 feels right to me, considering there are 4 teams doubling, but we're really only bullish on 2 in Brentford and Brighton, and that feels like going triple on, particularly on Brighton, who blank in 28, just feels like you're going to be upsetting some sort of balance in your squad structure. Yeah,
I think 4 sounds about right to me as well, and that could be, depending on how you're set up, it could be 3 Brighton. Or the thing about having 3 Brighton is that they don't play in 28, but you do have transfers, right? I mean, you're going to have a transfer between 27 and 28, and you could burn 4. That's not going to hurt you that much either. And so you could go from 2 to 1 or 3 to 2 or whatever. It wouldn't, especially if one of those 3. And this is, again, it sounds like a joke almost, but the fact that Steele is now probably pretty safely the starting keeper for Brighton really makes things easier because. Well, that's the comments that came up with the manager is basically like, he's my style of keeper, and that's and so that's he's basically like he's my guy is what he came out and said, and this is very similar to me with Potter and Kepa, right? Where you're like, really, Kepa, and then he's like, his play suits my style, and then suddenly you're like, okay, great, and so I feel reasonably confident in that, and so if you think of it that way. And you can do it on a wild card, or maybe even in your case, you could do it with transfers. If you bring in Steele as like a super cheap keeper, then he could be your backup keeper, right? For 28, right? And then you could actually keep Kepa because the Kepa has a good 28 fixture and he doubles in 29, and so then you could bench boost with Steele and Kepa in 29, which I think has some appeal. So. I know it's like you wouldn't think like a 3.9 million keeper would completely upend my strategy, but it kind of does. Like it sort of opens up some possibilities actually, Brandon, if that's what you're into.
But it's just like you're gonna get rid of Danny Ward, who also doubles in 29. Not
Ward
bad
sucks.
fixtures.
Ward's not going to get you anything. I'm sorry. He lucked into a penalty save with a terrible kick.
All right, I'm contagious. Apparently, I'm contagious.
Yeah, you're right. Yeah, you got me talking negatively. He does though. He sucks. All right. So yeah, I think roughly 4 in some combination. That feels like plenty. And I think 4 is also I think a good number because all those 4 that you bring in are 4 who will, assuming you keep them in your squad, double in 29 as well. So you could kind of do like a little 1 in, 1 out. I think with one of the, if you kept enough money in the bank with one of your Brighton midfielders, you could move to someone like Almiron for 28, right? And then either keep him or move back to a Brighton mid for 29 as well. So there are some options there. I think that make like a little bit of sense. Pat R says, how should we weigh the single game week players? Many people are on top teams playing week competition versus the double game weekers. For instance, I'm weighing playing McAllister versus someone like Odegaard, Martinelli, or the GAC attack. Talked about this a little bit already. I would feel fine moving Gakpo or Odegaard, honestly. I mean, I thought Odegaard played okay. He played okay in the Brighton match. But again, he's got the deep line. It's a little bit like Bruno, honestly. It's like you can get these massive game weeks, but then there's a lot of 2s and 3s interspersed in there as well, right? Like it's tricky.
And you have to understand that in this situation that we're in with the next few game weeks is you're not being asked to make a judgment of, okay, Solly March is a better player than Martin Odegaard. You're not saying that with a transfer like that. You're just saying this is a better situation for my fantasy team. It's not real life. Exactly. So, don't find yourself backing yourself into this corner of like, I can't admit that March is a better player than Odegaard. It's not. That's not the choice you're making.
Sometimes that's a good point. Even I struggle with that sometimes. I mentioned before I have a kind of block around Solly March, which is hard for me to see him as a real fantasy player. I think we kind of answered that one. Crazy Wisdom says if you still have your wild card and I think we covered this already. Sorry, Brendan. I'm like, I got to clean up this running order as we go. We've been so efficient. So good on this week's pod that we've covered a lot of these questions already.
Gakpo-esque, the way we've attacked this running order here today.
I've got 2 more I want to handle, though, on this week's pod, Brandon. Okay. First one, we discussed it a little bit already, but I want to get your real honest opinion on whether you think this is a viable question, which is from FPL Rabbi, friend of the pod. And he says, if you're having a hard time moving up in your ranks, right? This is a crucial qualifier. Although maybe I give away my hand here a little bit. But he says, if you're having a hard time moving up the ranks, how crazy is it to ditch Haaland in game week 28 for a Oliver Watkins, to free up funds for a Liverpool double up in game week 29 for your bench boost?
I mean, okay, fine. I guess we do have to talk about Haaland a bit. The last 5 game weeks, 4, 6, 2, 10, 4. Actually, go back 6 game weeks. You're missing another 2. Yep. City are just such a strange team. Yep. He's only had 1 double-digit return since game week 17. City are in just such a strange place. Haaland, another another appointee to Brandon's insane 11 from this weekend. I felt like I was up on a Haaland 5-pointer even before any other matches were played. I was like, I can deal with this. Haaland capped 5 points, and then he comes running halfway across the field just to scream in somebody's face for no Dan Byrne or something like this, and I was screaming at that. I was like, it was like a MC Escher of just like many other people screaming as you zoomed out. Haaland was screaming at Byrne. I was in my living room screaming at the TV where Haaland was. My wife was in the other room screaming at me, telling me to shut up, and then the yellow was brandished, and here we are.
You had to think you were getting smoked, right? When you get out of that match from 4 from Haaland, and then Saka's playing Bournemouth at home, you must be like, it's gonna be hard to even watch this match, right?
I felt like I had scored a 2-point conversion in that point because I knew Saka was going to have to do something to match 4 because Saka just couldn't. Prior to the assist, Saka could have just held on for 3, the clean sheet point, and he would have beaten the Haaland captaincy. So it was like I scored a 2-point conversion. It was a strategic win, but didn't guarantee victory. But I was not feeling great going into the Bournemouth match.
I think the problem with Haaland is you just never know when the 17-pointer is coming. And even if he's not going to be widely captain, he's going to be very, very widely owned. And so if he pulls out a 17-pointer, which is, he might have a 30-pointer in his locker, Brandon. It would not be impossible to imagine a match where Haaland scored 5 goals. What would that be? 5 times 4 is 20 plus 2.
Plus 3.
He needed more than that, right? Plus 3 bonus.
A 6-bagger.
Even then, I think he's only at 29. Jeez, he needs 7 goals. Do I think Haaland has 7 goals in him?
I don't know. Liverpool can do it. Why can't Haaland?
Why can't Haaland? That's true. I guess I could see like 5 goals and 2 assists or something like that. That's not really how Man City are playing right now, though. It's not. But again, it's just so easy for him because he's tall and strong, and the whole squad is kind of built around getting chances for him. So of course he can do that. So I would ideally not drop Haaland. That is, I would try to find a way to get around that. Is there a way to wild card in Mo Salah? I mean, the problem is Kane, really. And Kane is on this Liverpool Spurs are on this really poor run at the moment. I just don't want Kane at the moment. Even though he's been so great for my team, he's like a player that I really would enjoy dropping. However, I cannot drop him before Forest at home and Southampton away. Those are not matches. Yeah. It just doesn't seem advisable because it's just not. I mean, there are going to be goals in those matches for sure. I mean, even Spurs not in great form. You feel like they're going to be able to put a couple past Forest at home and Southampton away. Mm-hmm. So Everton away in 30 or in 29. Yeah, that's fine. I can drop him for that. I don't need him for that one. So then what is the plan? If I keep him for 27 and 28, this is why I initially really like the idea of wild carding in 29 and and then the idea was basically that a wild card in 29, because you could sort of just evade some of the earlier questions, basically like not worry as much about the 27 double. You could really drill down and get some players from like West Ham play Southampton and Newcastle at home. And which I don't know now at the moment, I really can't imagine having anybody from West Ham, but in theory that is a possibility. It'd be easier to triple up on Newcastle.
I hate West Ham right now so much. So,
they're like,
get that out there.
They should be more fun. I think I don't hate them, but I do. They're like oddly boring this season, which I feel like they shouldn't be. Like it feels like there's enough interesting players on that team that they should not be boring. And I think that would be my complaint. But you could triple up Man United. It'd be easier to triple up on. I mean, you probably wouldn't want to triple on Liverpool because they play Man City and Chelsea away, but. I don't know. There's just some possibilities for squad. Chelsea. Potter gets sacked, then maybe there's like a little bounce that you could take advantage of, and because they have a decent double. They play Villa and Liverpool at home in 29. So anyway, I think that I just have to. Maybe it's possible. I mean, the thing is that's nice about Brentford and Brighton players is they're so cheap that it's not like it's not incredibly hard to build a team that has some of these players. If I just drop Trent and Gakpo and Odegaard, I probably freed up enough money to have kind of all the players that I would want. So I don't know.
Yeah.
It's a possibility.
Okay, hit us with the last question here.
Okay, the last question comes from Aldfinger. I think that's a real
Is
name,
that like
Brandon?
a James Bond play?
Aldfinger. I've heard of Auld Long Sing.
Aldfinger.
Aldfinger. Is it Auld Long? You know the song.
Old Lang Syne?
Auld Lang Syne. Yeah, what did I say? Auld Lang Sing. I get out of this podcast, I can barely talk. So anyway, Aldfinger says, do you think a targeted free hit 29 can outscore? Again, this is you and I are just really we're in chip territory here, Brandon. Shaky ground for us. Yeah. It's not shaky ground exactly, but it's I struggle with it a little bit because I don't have there's that kind of personality that can do I'll give credit. The Planet FPL guys are good at this, right? And there's kind of personality that can be like, this is the optimal strategy, and here's how you should do it. And when I hear people talk about chips, I'm like, well, it's like my voice goes up 2 octaves. It's like, well, there's you could do this, you could do this, you could do this, you could do this, you could do this. It's very team dependent, and it kind of depends on whether you want to do this and that. And it's like it spins off in like 1,000 different directions for me. And so, and I don't have a lot of, in general, the kind of conventional approach is I'm like kind of instinctively wary of it, whereas I think there's something appealing about somebody just being like, this is really the way to go. This is kind of the optimal way to play.
It's very easy for these other content creators, Josh, to give out fishing poles and fish to all these FPL managers. We're here to teach you how to fish. So you can go out there.
Right.
So you can go there and win.
Yeah,
so,
we want this pod to feel like homework, ideally. Anyway, let's get back to Aldfinger and his question here.
Please.
They say, do you think a targeted free hit 29 can outscore a bench boost 29 given the freedom to, this is actually what we were just talking about a second ago, given the freedom to include as it's highly unlikely to appear in wildcard 26, 27 drafts on account of their respective blanks in game week 28. So I think it's possible that a free hit 29 could outscore a bench boost. It's very possible. However, you have to think about the team that you're going back to after that. So what is your team going to look like? Does it make sense just to bench boost 29 and then just give yourself players that you're actually going to want to have down the road? I think that's one thing to consider.
Yeah, this was my thought on Thursday night when I was recording the podcast with Dave. And I was thinking free hit in 29 because I felt like, well, this is just the simplest, most elegant solution. 29 is a very customizable, lots of doubles, and let's just go bespoke.
Yep.
And then the understanding is, how do you play 28? 28 is just, the blanks there, it's so poorly timed in the schedule and makes this really tricky to navigate. So I just feel like the free hit makes eminently more sense. Did it even use that word correctly? In 28.
Yes.
So that's my strong feeling. However, yes, with everything we've just said, if you've wildcarded in 26 or wildcarding in 27 or even in 28, then the free hit would not be necessary. So the way the fish I'm gonna give you, listener, is if you're not wildcarding pre-29, free hit in 28. If you are wildcarding pre-29, free hit at a later date, possibly game week 32 when there will be the next round of blanks.
I think that's right. I think you could do a wild card in 27, free hit in 28, bench boost in 29, but I just don't think it's necessary. I think you might as well just wild card into a team that can reasonably get you there with 28. It's not like 28 is such a amazing game week that it's necessarily worth a free hit unless you've completely cracked it, right? Where you're like, the only way that I can put together a team I like in 27, 29 is if I have like 3 players who play, in 28. It's like the only thing that makes sense for me. And if that's the case, fair enough. But I just think I don't know. I think because people like Brentford play twice in 29, I think it's fairly straightforward, I think, in Newcastle, I think, our team that you could play 27, 28, and 29. And so I think that's sort of where I am with it. But I think your argument for 28 makes a lot of sense, too. And that's actually where I was a couple of days ago. It's just over the weekend is when I started to talk myself into an earlier wild card.
Yeah, when I start looking at what I'm doing with my team with a -8 for 27, I'm going to have a real come to Jesus moment with the wild card. You're
all right. Well, we're both gonna be on. Brandon and
Maybe.
Josh are gonna be on Wildcard. Let's see. Oh, no, I just said on Wildcard. I'm just trying to talk like you. I'm dropping my articles on a Wildcard.
Next thing you know, you're gonna be going to hospital. Or
hospital.
doing your maths or something like this.
All right. Well, let's wrap this pod up because I've got to go to the toilet. All right. Well, thanks to everyone for listening. We'll be back on Thursday with a Patreon pod. It's going to be a big one. The next few days, honestly, I'm kind of looking forward to it. One thing that is nice, Brandon, is that we, at least now that we have these FA Cup matches done, we do have a little more of a roadmap, and after 32, I believe those are the final blanks that we'll have this season. So we're getting close to the final blanks. The blanks are really the biggest problem, right? Doubles you can sort of target as you want, but blanks tend to require a little more. You got to like make sure you're kind of covered for those. And so it feels like we're gonna, like, once 29 is over, I think we're gonna be in a slightly simpler place down the stretch. Very similar to how kind of pre-2020 FPL felt, right? Which is handful of doubles, a lot of blank, or a lot of normal game weeks otherwise. And I think that'll really kind of even things out, I think, for the stretch. And I think most people will play their chips too by the time like 32 or 34 rolls around. So it's really going to be like a fun home stretch for everybody.
Well articulated, Joshua. And if you like that and you like what we did this podcast, you want to say thanks and get more FPL content in return, please visit us at patreon.com/alwayscheating, where you can support what we do. We're going to be doing that Thursday night podcast that Josh mentioned for our supporters. It's going to be a wild one. We'll be all over our Discord with lots of strategy chat. There are many other benefits, including swag at the higher tiers. Check it out. Again, patreon.com/alwayscheating. As always, we like to thank our producers, Mike DePietro, Trevor Ingerson, our buddy Chris Howell, the Big Gaffer, Bob Kuhn, James Holland, Dave Wagner, Lodahl, Nick Wright, Lazaros Llanos, Jesse Halstead, Bruce Kerr, Brian Chin, Rich Evans, Blair Jacobson, Todd Byerly, Andy Portlock, Dan Parsons, at FPL Merch, Kerry Swanson, Jefferson Turner, Francis Moore, Sam Shower, Caleb Robbie, Lee Hickman, Volker Paulson Kruger, Alex Holcomb, James Keatley, The Saint, Bob Fox, Craig Jackson, James Conroy, Shalin F. Kadakia, Terrence O'Donnell, Paul Herzig, Heath Cram, Roberto Morals, Thomas Tislov, and Noah and Louise. Rate, review, subscribe wherever you get your podcast. Check us out on YouTube. We're getting more subscribers every day. It's just audio content for now, but we know you love it. You know it, you love it. People go to YouTube all the time, don't they, Josh? It's like the most popular search engine on the planet. Did you know that?
Yeah. Well, it feels like it's cheating now because Google is kind of like. I mean, obviously Google owned YouTube. Yeah, exactly. So I feel like it's kind of, it's either way. So yeah.
Yeah. All right. Follow us on social media if that's your thing. All this information and more is at alwayscheating.com. I feel happy with the ground we covered there, Josh. It feels
Me too.
It was a good summary.
Yeah, I think I feel like you and I sorted our thoughts out in real time, which is honestly not a style we always do on this podcast, but it was sort of fun to do that. And I think maybe if there's like a final takeaway here, it's that it is tricky, and I think the tone is. I don't think you and I were. It's funny because usually when it's this tricky, we can get a little like stressed out about it. But I'm finding it sort of invigorating. I'm not sure why. Mm-hmm. It's so unique.
I'm a little stressed.
All these. It's a little stressed, but I think it's it just feels like it's engaged. I feel very engaged with the game right now, there's a lot of challenges, but they're sort of fun to try to tackle and solve.
All right, well, let's sign off, Josh. It's been a while since I said hello to our good friend Poku, so it's a Poku forever for me. Yeah. Any last words, Josh?
No, people still send us some Alexander Sorloth updates too, Brent. He's still kicking around. I think he's at like Celta Vigo now or something like that. I think he's in La Liga. So hail Sorloth wherever you are, and Sam Vokes too, Brandon. The whole crew.
And Bacani, we love you
guys. We do. All right, bye.